today. As I mentioned, we do have simultaneous translation into French, Arabic, and Portuguese. You can find the instructions on how to access interpretation on your screen. Click on the interpret the language of your choice. Next slide, please. Welcome everyone to the July edition of our Emerging Practice webinar series. It's good to see so many familiar names on the screen today. As many of you know, my name is Jessica Gorham, and I am the Regional Emergency GBV Advisor, working on behalf of UNFPA's mandate to coordinate in emergency. And for the purpose of today, I am also the chair of the Regional GBV Working Group for East and Southern Africa. As many of you know, we do have an Emerging Practice webinar series. Every month we try to elevate or promote new practice or emerging practice, and we try to highlight organizations that are working on those issues throughout East and Southern Africa. A big thanks to UNICEF, who provides the funding for all of our simultaneous interpretation. It's very much appreciated. And a big thanks to our member organization, WHO today. We have Maria Katerina on the line. She will be monitoring the chat in French, and I will continue to monitor the chat in English. If you have any questions, please write them in the chat. We will not have an open Q&A session because we have interpretation. It becomes a little bit too complex. So we will be answering any questions you might have in real time in the chat. So please, if you have any questions, do write them in the chat. I'll keep repeating that. Many of you have asked if we will share the presentations that are delivered during our Emerging Practice webinar series. We do not share the presentations, but you are free to listen to this webinar and watch those presentations as many times as you would like, because we upload all of our interventions or learning events to our YouTube channel. And you can find this recording and all other recordings on our YouTube channel. You just need to go to YouTube and look for GBV AOR and then go to videos. And then you will find this and also all of our additional recordings on our YouTube channel. I'm really pleased today. We had a member organization who asked for additional information about technology facilitated GBV. And so we are delivering here in July. Today's presenters, we have Felicity Mulford, who is the research manager at Center for Information Resilience. Felicity will be talking about some of the research that they have completed in Ethiopia on technology facilitated GBV. Faith Kalai, who is the legal program associate at the Coalition on Violence Against Women, or COVAW, here in Kenya. So as I mentioned, please do keep your microphones on mute and also your videos off. And without further delay, I will hand it over to our colleague Felicity. Kabeli, if you could stop sharing, and then Felicity can start. Thank you all for joining, and you'll hear from me at the end. Over to you, Felicity.
Fabulous. Can you see my screen? The first important question.
Yes.
That's fabulous. Great. Well, firstly, thank you so much to the UN FPA team for having us here today to speak about our work.
Yes.
All good. My amazing colleague Nadine is going to also be monitoring the chat, so please do drop any questions that you might have for us in the chat. My name is Felicity Mulford, and as Jessica said, I'm a research manager at the Centre for Information Resilience. We're a non-profit dedicated to exposing human rights violations and countering disinformation and online harms. In my role as a research manager, I've had the privilege of running a project in Ethiopia for 2.5 years now, and that's what we're going to speak to you about today. Again, if I speak too fast, please just let me know. I have a habit of talking quickly, so just let me know. So before we dive into the data and the research that we've done, in case people on the call aren't familiar with this concept, I thought it was best to start with the definition. So we at CIR actually use the UNFPA's definition of TFGBV, tech facilitated gender-based violence, because it's one of the most complete definitions. So we define TFGBV using that definition as an act of violence that's committed, assisted, aggravated, or amplified by the information and communication technologies or digital media against a person due to their gender. Now, when you look at it like that, it can sound like quite an abstract thing, but when you think about all the different types of harms that this encompasses, it's actually really broad. It can be anything from gender disinformation to doxing, to sexual harassment online, to cyberbullying, to using tracking devices and phones to track the whereabouts of an individual, image-based sexual abuse and revenge pornography. The list goes on. It's a really quite broad harm. Now, as part of this work, we've had the opportunity to sit with groups of individuals in Ethiopia to talk about the way they interact with technology and their experiences with technology and the online space. And this quote here, I think, really summarizes for me what we're dealing with and what we're talking about. So one of our participants said, "It's terrifying that no matter how many advancements we make, GBV, gender-based violence, finds new ways to follow." So when we talk about TFGBV, a quite useful way to think about it is a new iteration of an age-old problem. You know, this is just a new manifestation, a new means through which GBV is enacted. So thank you to our workshop participant. Now, why is this important? Well, gender-based violence, as many practitioners here on the call will know, it contributes to a cycle of marginalisation. Now, TFGBV just slots into that cycle. It's another tool by which women and other genders are abused. Now, it forms this cycle, and we believe that cycle must be broken. So a bit about us and our work. So we've been working in Ethiopia now for 2.5 years with 3 key missions. Mission 1, strengthen the evidence base on TFGBV. Now this started because we had conversations with women in Ethiopia who said that they were experiencing all sorts of different online harm and tech-related harms. But when they tried to advocate about these experiences, they were often told, "It's just you. You know, there's no data to back this up." Well, CIR, our organisation, we're quite well placed to do research into this type of topic. So we took on this challenge to have a look at what was happening in the context of Ethiopia. We also had a second goal of raising awareness about the issue through education, conferences, workshops, reporting, and then also using this information to empower individuals, CSOs, governments, and other stakeholders with the information that they need to make informed decisions and for evidence for advocacy. Now, those are 3 quite large goals, but when we look at what we've done over the last years, you can see a number of different activities that led to these goals being met. We've carried out qualitative research. We did in-depth, semi-structured interviews with women in Ethiopia. We then carried out 2 very large quantitative studies looking at social media data across 5 different platforms. We looked at Facebook, X, Telegram, TikTok, and YouTube. And now to note, this study was expanded. It included both men and women, not just women like the qualitative research. Alongside this, at every step of the process, we had workshops and roundtables with community leaders in Ethiopia, with human rights experts and bodies. And these were fantastic for helping us to understand the data, helping to look at the bigger picture. We also always posed the question in those conversations of, okay, well, what do we do about this? And the answers to those questions formed our community-led recommendations document, which we're very proud of and sits on our website. To ensure that all of our work was really robust and methodologically rigorous, we put our methodology through academic peer review, and we're really pleased to see it being published by the Resources for African Indigenous Languages Journal. So we can say that our quantitative work is built upon a really solid foundation. And now, in the spirit of open source, which is what our company specializes in, we actually have published all of our methodologies, but also our lexicons that we built with the community in Ethiopia. And we have a lexicon of over 2,000 terms that are considered inflammatory terms in 4 Ethiopian languages. Now, alongside
Yes,
this, we've done all sorts of different
yeah.
activity. So we had a conference in Addis Ababa. We had over 150 people from various organizations and stakeholder groups to talk about this issue. And we hosted that with the Ethiopian Human Rights Defenders Network and Defenders Center and the Ethiopian Women Human Rights Defenders Network. That was actually a fantastic opportunity to bring people together who are working on this topic, share knowledge and expertise, and hear from survivors. Now, for the next 2 years, we're pivoting slightly. We're away from this in-depth research to building a toolkit with a fantastic youth organization on how to monitor and combat TFGBV. We're trying our best to localize the expertise within a youth group in Ethiopia. Now, as you can imagine, that's a lot of activity. There's been a lot of findings. So what I'm trying to do now for the remainder of my presentation is just bring together a few of those really key research findings that might interest you today. But yes, if you'd like to know more or hear more, you can go to our website and read the reports in full. So in terms of the key findings, one of the things that we have seen repeatedly across the multiple years working on this project is that tech-facilitated gender-based violence in all of its different forms is actually silencing women in Ethiopia, and it's leading to them withdrawing from public spaces, both on and offline. Now, as you can imagine, that's quite concerning for democracy. We've also found that gendered abuse itself is so endemic that most people don't notice it's there. It's so normalized. And this means that to many people, the abuse is invisible. You know, the shock factor is gone for gendered abuse. We think this is something that we really need to change. In the interviews, one thing that we heard repeatedly was that no platform feels safe for women and girls in Ethiopia. And that makes us realize that we need to talk to the people designing these platforms to understand how we can make them safer for their users. Another thing that we think stood out in all this work is how misunderstood gendered abuse is, including gendered hate speech. Lots of people think because it's mockery, because it's stereotypical base, it's not harmful. But it is harmful. So we need to have a think about how we think about the topic to help people understand the severity of the things that are said and things are done online. We can also see a real connection between the online and the offline spaces. So we see offline events really impacting online dialogue and vice versa. So we have to realize that these spaces are connected. We also found that women who challenge traditional gender norms are particularly targeted and often very much discredited, while men who are in public life are emasculated. So we see some real gender dynamics behind the abuse these individuals receive. Now, one of the key takeaways is that actually this type of online abuse, or the TFGBV that we've been researching, it's actually shaping who has a right and who feels safe to speak, lead and exist online. And seeing as the online world is becoming so much part of everyday life, this is something of great concern. Now, one of the things that came out of all these workshops that was quite interesting was a belief that the online space isn't real. It's really detached from reality. But actually, that's not the case. You know, if you're sitting on your phone in your bedroom and you're seeing all this horrible stuff, it's still real. It's not that it's a different world. So we really believe we've got to somehow educate and overcome this persistent view that the online space is not real. Now, I thought I could just show you a few of the types of abuse and narratives that we were analysing in our data sets. And one of the things that we took away from this is that TFGBV is very deeply intertwined with entrenched gender norms and misogynistic attitudes. And this impacts both men and women, not just women, but both men and women. So we found that women were actually more likely than men to receive inferiority and degrading language and more stereotypes and mockery, whereas men were more likely to receive aggressive forms of abuse. So even in the types of abuse these genders are receiving, there are gendered differences in how it manifests. Now, this means there are gender-specific responses too that we can look into. Now, one thing that was quite interesting was that there was proportionally less threats and aggressive speech in our data set than these other forms of hate and other forms of abuse. And that surprised lots of people in our workshops, because they saw threats all the time and aggressive speech all the time. But actually what they weren't noticing was all the other lower level, let's say, forms of abuse that circulated alongside this, leading to this online toxic culture. When we look at the narratives that women were facing, most of it revolved around societal norms. Women that were challenging gender stereotypes received some of the worst abuse in our data sets. So this could have been politicians, sports leaders, and we saw a lot of sexualization, discrediting them, insults and stigma. There's one example from the Ethiopian study where we have a huge amount of abuse targeting the mayor of Addis, a woman, and it all says that she could only have got to her position had she slept her way to the top. Now, this is a very common narrative to see levied against women in positions of power, but it was amplified through these online spaces. We also found a huge backlash to individuals that spoke about women's rights or feminism. So we saw things that we saw texts saying that feminism is considered a threat. We saw links between feminists and accusations of financial fraud. We also saw accusations of homosexuality. Now, as you can imagine, in the context of Ethiopia, that's incredibly dangerous for these people to be labelled because it's illegal. We also saw the use of religious language being used to legitimize the abuse targeting women. Lots of connections to women and original sin and Satan. This was something that was quite predominant in the data set. When you look at men, you can see there are different types of abuse, but still it's very gendered. Lots of the abuse they received was about their weakness or their lack of masculinity. Often we saw men being abused using the objectification of women, women's reproductive health as a lexicon through which to shame men. So I put a few examples here on the screen of them. These are probably some of the least explicit in our data set. You can imagine what we had beyond this. But things like, he's so weak, he should be wearing a dress, or he was raised by a single mother. Does he have enough tampons? These types of insults and slurs. And what those insults actually do is they actually insult women at the same time. So women not only experience gender-based violence through some of these forms of online abuse firsthand, but they become the tool through which men are also abused. They are symbolized in that abuse. We also saw the mainstreaming of misogynistic rhetoric. So words that started in the far right channels of like 4chan in the incel culture in the US, words like simp, beta, cup, low T. These slang words have proliferated on Ethiopian TikTok. So you can see how the virality of these online spaces is allowing misogynistic rhetoric to swirl around the world. And this was quite alarming for us. It was the first time we picked up some of this misogynistic and pejorative language in this setting. Now, one thing I want to note is that this type of abuse does not occur in a vacuum. it really intersects with ethnicity, religion, political affiliation, and that creates very complex types of abuse with complex solutions. And, political events offline really did impact the dialogue online, especially conflicts and other ethnic tensions. We saw this impact abuse online. Now, this means that there are certain vulnerabilities that might increase the risk of TFGBV, and that's something that we think everyone should be aware of. So, for example, we found lots of abuse targeting Amharan women during a period of uprising in Ethiopia. Now, I mentioned that we looked at multiple platforms in our research, and I think it's quite important to note that there are actually some platform similarities in the types of abuse we saw across these platforms, but also platform differences. And I think what that really shows is that there is some platform-specific interventions that we need to look into, but also some broader changes across the board. We saw some horrible content starting on one platform and then cross-pollinating over to another platform. So one solution is not going to work. We need multiple solutions to try and tackle the problem. For example, we saw quite different types of abuse on those different platforms, and that really mimicked the usership and the use of those platforms. We found quite polarizing content on TikTok, and I think that really is the impact of the virality of the platform. People say very shocking things to get the likes, to get pushed to new users. Whereas with YouTube, it was much more politically motivated and ethnically driven gendered abuse. So you saw quite different types of speech in these different forums. Now, one of the things I wanted to make it very clear is that when we spoke to all of these individuals in these workshops and roundtables, there was a real crisis in trust in the platforms and tech companies. Now, we really need to open up better dialogue with those tech companies, with the platforms, to try and understand how we can inform them as the human rights community about the way these platforms are being used. For example, we should be helping them to develop the guidelines and policies. We should actually be ensuring that those policies exist in the languages of the users. For example, many of the tech platforms don't have their user policies in Ethiopian languages. So the simple steps need to be taken to try to increase the ability of the users to protect themselves online. This also comes amidst a changing global tech environment where tech platforms are going away from moderation towards free speech models. So I think there's something else that we need to be questioning is this the right approach for all countries where automated content moderation may be less effective? I think the final note on platforms for today is that resounding belief of all of our workshop participants is that TikTok, due to the virality, was actually the most toxic and scary platform for individuals to engage with. People were saying outrageous things in order to get the attention. And I think that's something we need to start considering. Is this the right thing for the human rights community, and how can we make this safer? So I think that's one of the lasting thoughts of our groups. Another lovely quote from one of our workshop participants: technology is the present and it's the future, so we need to create a safe space for people to use it. I thought I'd end on that note because there's got to be some optimism here. These tech platforms, the different tech opportunities that have come our way, it's fantastic, but we need to find a way to make this safe for the users and protect vulnerable groups in these settings. Now, if you'd like to read any of our research, you can do so by scanning this QR code with your phone or following the link, or my colleague might have already shared it. We have a number of different publications in a number of different languages, but I'm more than willing to answer any questions as well after today. And thank you again so much to the UNFPA team for having me here today.
Great. Thank you, Felicity. Very clear. There are a few, yep, I see that Nadine is answering some of the questions in the chat, but if you would like to continue to ask questions to the CIR team, please do keep adding questions in the chat. I know that Nadine and now Felicity will be monitoring the chat for those questions. And also we have Maria Katerina from WHO who can respond or link you to questions if you write them in French. So thank you very much, Felicity. I think if you can stop sharing your screen, we'll turn over to Faith. Faith, who is our the legal program assistant from CoVal. And we're really excited also to have CoVal joining us today here from Kenya. And I appreciate that Felicity gave us a great background on tech-facilitated GBV and sort of the characteristics of it in Ethiopia. And now CoVal will tell us a little bit about how partners are responding to survivors who identify as survivors of tech-facilitated GBV. And I know that this is also incorporating a little bit the government as well. So Faith, I will turn it over to you. You have approximately 20 minutes. If you could speak very slowly for the interpreters, and also please tell us when you would like Kambele to go to the next slide. So please just say next slide and Kambele can turn it for you. Over to you, Faith.
Thank you very much, Jessica. I hope I'm audible enough. Am I? Jessica, please confirm.
Yes, you're coming through clear. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, it's good afternoon from our side here. And I would just tell you good afternoon from Kenya. My name is Faith Halai. I work for the Coalition on Violence Against Women, a human rights organization here in Kenya. And we have been in existence since 1995, advocating for the rights of women to access comprehensive sexual and gender-based care services, SRHR services, and we have programs to do with women in leadership. And one of our anchor activities is access to justice. So we offer access to justice for women who are in distress and women who have undergone sexual and gender-based violence. I must say that as Felicity was speaking, I was nodding as though the research was conducted from our country. All the key findings from Ethiopia are mirrored here in Kenya. Kenya is a, can we move to the next slide, please? I have touched on our mission and vision and what we do in comprehensive care. So we can proceed to the next slide. Thank you. I wanted to say that Kenya is a very social media intense country. And with that also comes a lot of technologically facilitated violence. And just by way of examples that some people might be aware of, we are one nation that bullied our own president out of Twitter, then called Twitter and now X, because there was a lot of technological abuse online, cyberbullying, image stalking and everything. And I think he just decided to pull down his social media account so that he can focus on service delivery. And we have continued to do that with all the, especially for women leaders in our country, they undergo intense forms of TFGBV. 1/3 of Kenyans use social media, and through a study done by UNFPA, we find that 90% of young adults have witnessed technologically facilitated violence in Kenya, and 39% have experienced it. I highlighted this because technology is very key among the youths in our country. We call them Gen Zs because of some other developments that we are undergoing right now, and it is very key for them. And women in leadership are also targets of technologically facilitated violence, both in political positions and other forms of leadership, judges, magistrates, women in the media. Everyone in the spotlight is a target of technologically facilitated violence here. And the common tactics that women face in this country is sexualization and casting them as immoral, discrediting their work, choosing to silence them, and some of them choose to withdraw from media, or they wear a persona that is not theirs so that they can be able to survive or to survive their political ambitions and push them forward. That the environment of technologically facilitated violence is also measured alongside the strong TFGBV related laws that we have in this country. The fact that we have a lot of TFGBV going on, we also have heavy laws that we have passed, including the Computer Misuse and Cyber Crimes Act. We now have the Data Protection Act. We have the Sexual Offences Act and the Penal Code, and other specific laws that protect specific vulnerable persons, including the Children's Act. However, this does not stop TFGBV from occurring. So it means that there's a gap between the laws and the proper implementation and cultural shift. So let's proceed. For COVAO, we focus, as I introduced ourselves earlier, we focus on women and girls. And the main focus is elevating women from gender-based violence. I will mention this project. One of the projects that ushered us properly into the field of technologically facilitated violence was the Transform Digital Spaces program led by IREX and funded by USAID. And although we did not get to finish it because funding stopped, we got a lot of key learnings that we have used to enhance our work in the Access to Justice Department. This project was known as Imarisha Usalama wa Binti Mtandaoni, which is loosely translated to mean that ensuring the safety of girls online. So it means girls and women. And we were seeking to respond. It was specific to women in leadership and public spaces. Some of the things that we sought to do was to review the Sexual Offences Act of our country to include TFGBV as a standalone offense. We also did work capacity strengthening of our justice actors in case management. And that goes hand in hand with our work with the pro bono advocates, because we realized that if we have to support survivors of TFGBV, they are going to be together with duty bearers, and they will need them well informed about the processes so that when they are doing case management, they know what to do. And justice actors here included judges and magistrates, director of criminal prosecutions, witness protection, children officers, and every other person that deals with women rights. So that means that we capacity built them, and we noticed that there were some gaps because some of them did not understand or did not fully comprehend the criminality of TFGBV, as Felicity has said, that there's that lack of understanding of criminality of TFGBV. Some people would say, you're being bullied online. Why don't you withdraw from social media completely? No one is forcing you to be there. And when you go to court, someone will say, why did you expose yourself to social media? If you expose yourself, you're inviting abuse, or you're inviting whatever it is that comes to you. So what we did in that whole project, another thing was about also lexicon building. I had Felicity mention, because I realized Kenyans have very unique ways of verbalizing abuse. So they will use Kiswahili terms, ethnical terms, and when the English designed media product, social media platforms will not pick them out quickly to see that this is a form of TFGBV or harassment. So one of the things we were doing was also lexicon building. So under this project, again, we capacity built our pro bono advocates, because the main thing we do at COVO is to offer support to survivors of sexual and gender-based violence, and now including technologically facilitated violence. And to do that, we always need pro bono advocates who can be able to accompany our survivors to court when they come to us. Let's proceed. One of the ways in which survivors come to us is through our toll-free line, which we operate at the Access to Justice Department. And this toll-free line is open to all survivors. And within all these engagements with our survivors, we have had several cases of women and girls who have undergone technologically facilitated violence. So we give them the toll-free line, and they call when they are in distress. So the first point of contact where they want to speak to us when they have undergone TFGBV, they call the toll-free line. And then from there, we offer them the relevant support from that point going forward. Can you proceed a bit? So the first thing we do for our survivors, we don't jump to any conclusion. We don't jump to being the people who understand what they are going through. The first thing we offer is psychological first aid. I'm aware people who are in the, people who are defenders in the women rights space, we understand what psychological first aid is, where we meet women who are in distress at the first point of contact. You want to understand why they are calling you, why they want to speak to you, what harm they have undergone, and how you can assist them. So for us, we use the, now I might say the universally or broadly accepted way of handling our toll-free clients when they come to us. Number one is we look for information on what has happened to them and who needs help, their safety, security, and emotional needs at that time. So when they call the toll-free line, we are there to look for all the signs of their safety and engagement and what information they are about to give us. Number two is we listen to our clients. Active listening is something that we learn, and all of us in the Access to Justice Department are capacity built on this so that we calm the survivor, because when they call to us, they're in distress. For example, their intimate photos have been shared in our WhatsApp group or online media or Telegram. That is another very peculiar social media platform that Kenyans use to troll or embarrass women. So most social media platforms like Facebook and Instagram and this common, you'd find that the information is censored. But when they go to Telegram, they create a link and share it everywhere. So if a woman's intimate pictures or videos have been shared, they will definitely end up in Telegram, and people will keep telling each other, go to Telegram, there's something to be seen there. There are major groups, big Telegram groups that host events where people engage in cyber crimes related to violence. And they are, when we listen, we ask them about their needs and concern, and we offer the necessary help as given by our clients. And the third thing that we do after we finish our toll-free engagement, we link. This is also part of psychological first aid. We link them. We give them the information that we have as cover, because we know that our strength is offering them legal support. So we link the survivors with other support that we might not directly have. So we have partnerships with counselors. We have partnership with other CSO organizations that can offer the necessary support. We have partnership with government agencies. This includes the police, the Communications Authority, the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions. So we link them depending on how far they come to us and where their case has reached and the type of assistance they need. So next. The second thing we offer, and this is with the consent and acceptance of our clients, is legal representation. As I told you earlier, that when we, under the Imarisha Usalama wa Binti Mtandaoni program, we capacity built pro bono lawyers specifically for technologically facilitated violence. And when such a matter arises and comes to us, and a client wants to take legal action, we offer them a pro bono advocate and work with them with the journey of prosecution so that they can get justice. The thing that we do is that sometimes when clients come to us, they are scared to even go and report to the police station. So what we do, we either assign one of the staff who is also an advocate, or we offer a pro bono a pro bono advocate so that they accompany them to the station, police station. In this country, for prosecution to begin, you have to report to the station to get something that they a record from the occurrence book before a case can progress, to go to the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution, and then it can go forward. So that is what we do with the client. We accompany them to the station, we can accompany them to hospital or psychosocial need, and then we accompany them to court when the matter has come forward. And other people, sometimes they come to us, they do not necessarily want as a first step to go to court for legal. So what we do is we refer, and we offer them psychosocial support services so that they can get assistance. Let's go ahead. So the other thing that we do, we realize and we recognize that TFGBV, as Felicity said, is a one way to silence women. So what women do is they get the chilling effect. Some of them withdraw and they don't even have the confidence. So if they're intimate photos, if they have been stalked from online to physical, they will end up, their confidence really disappears. So when you're speaking to such a client, the first thing to do is survivor empowerment. So we build their confidence in terms of reporting, in terms of litigation and the case management, and we work with them. And we always want to have a response that is survivor-centered and survivor-led so that they can lead the type of, it is their story, and we lead them the way they want it to reach. So one of the things we do is we empower them first. If we, depending these things, the levels of support I have given here, they are coexisting, they're intertwined, so that we can be offering legal support, we can be offering psychosocial support. We're also doing survivor empowerment so that the survivor is strong enough to undergo the legal processes within this country. We know that they are lengthened. So that is what we do. Let's proceed. So one would ask, what is the role of the government in addressing TFGBV in Kenya? As I stated earlier, government through the legislature has worked very hard to enact legislations that address TFGBV, including data protection, including cyber crimes, and sector-specific. Children cannot share content of children online without necessary permissions and approvals. So that within the legislature, that is good. So we come on the side of implementation. What is this role? There is an entity that implements the Cyber Crimes Act. It's called the Communications Authority of Kenya. And this authority is supposed to receive, one of the things that relate to TFGBV is that it receives complaints that relate to any form. So they always have a link. When you go to the website of CA, you will find a link there that prompts you to report abuse. It asks you what is the type of abuse, and then tells you to submit so that someone can get back to you. However, we realize that that means of submission is usually not forthcoming. The response is not as quick enough for TFGBV victims. We've had a client just last week who has reached out to us. We tried going through the link provided by the CA, but no response was forthcoming. So we have to go to using the traditional way of reporting to the police and then taking legal action as we progress. We just hope that we'll have better mechanisms to address TFGBV as we go forward. For police, now we have GBV reporting desks. These are dedicated gender desks. We call them that in Kenya, where women who have undergone gender-based violence can go there and report the matter, and then the case will be handled without necessarily the matter going to the normal reporting desk for other crimes. We realize that people who report gender matters are often stigmatized at the station. The police, if they are not well capacity built, they tend to do more harm to the clients than to assist them. So especially for TFGBV, we've noticed that police treat TFGBV casually. So they'll ask you, what is the crime here? Why have you come here? See, you just leave social media if you feel like it is harming you. So those people, if you find that women are missing out on justice, and some of them they fear going to the station to report TFGBV because it is treated casually. The next place that we go to is the Director of Criminal Investigation and the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions, because they are the ones who prosecute crimes, and the judiciary, very significant, because they are the ones that uphold the dignity of clients through hearing and determining matters to do with TFGBV. The one thing that I feel is a barrier for Kenya, even as we support survivors, is for TFGBV, is the lack of universally accepted definition for TFGBV, and even within our own laws. If you look at the data protection, if you look at the communication, it is not clear. So different entities move with different definitions. The next thing is the attitude towards criminality of TFGBV. TFGBV is not considered a crime, or it is treated casually, not just for duty bearers who are the police post people speak, and they sorry for that. They casually post people's pictures online, they troll them, they make snide comments, and they expect you to be strong. If you are not strong for social media, you should not be here. So that's the rule that most Kenyans operate with. So we have not treated this criminality of TFGBV with the strength that it deserves. So those are some of the barriers, and also the lack of care and awareness for duty bearers relating to what TFGBV is. So
Faith, you have 1 minute.
yes, okay, I'm concluding. Let's proceed to the last slide. Okay, so thank you. My 1 minute will end here. These are some of the recommendations for us as frontline supporters of people, of survivors of TFGBV. Is the number one is the transnational nature of TFGBV. We have to come up with mechanisms to handle that. And even transborder. I have had a client whose crime has happened in Murang'a, a part in Kenya, and they live in another part, and they have now, in our Kenyan context, if you report where the crime happened. For TFGBV, that's not the case, because TFGBV is online. And then we need regional advocacy, strength and awareness on how to report cases. And another thing that I wanted to stand out for us here, and maybe it's a challenge for other places, is the evidence collection for TFGBV. For example, a client came to us and told us her intimate video was shared when she was naked, and the person who shared used a view once feature in WhatsApp. I don't know if people know that. Then it got lost and she was not in that group. And it becomes difficult to go to police and say, someone shared my intimate photos and I do not have the video or the evidence to show. So if our DCI can be empowered with modern evidence collection mechanisms for TFGBV, that will be great. Thank you very much, Jessica and team, for giving us this opportunity to speak about our work.
Thank you, Faith. That was amazing. Both to Faith and Felicity, thank you so much. I'm gonna quickly, if Maria Katerina, who has been monitoring the chat in French, was there any theme or overwhelming question that you would like to ask to either Faith or Felicity?
No, there was just a general question about how to reach out to girls and women who are not very literate. And I think that can be addressed through helplines.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, Maria Katerina. And I think one recurrent question that we did also have was, and I know Nadine, you had put an answer in the chat, but maybe also we can hear from Faith, and also Nadine, if you want to come in as some of our two last questions before we close. One is about the accountability of tech companies.
Yes.
And have you seen any in your work? And I'll ask both Nadine or Felicity and Faith that question. And then the second and last question would be, do we have any global SOPs, or, and I know we have some UNFPA colleagues who are devoted to this topic online as well, but are there SOPs out there that directly address tech facilitated GBV? I know that we have general GBV standard operating procedures, but are there specific ones, because there is nuances to this phenomenon that would not be captured in a general just GBV SOP. So the first question is around accountability of tech companies, and I'll ask both of our speakers. And then the second question is about those SOPs, which I think all of our participants could benefit from. So Faith, over to you about tech companies.
Okay, thank you, Jessica. I have seen this question, and I would want to say that we did a study, though yet not officially published, that looked at the weak moderation by tech companies, the entire TFGBV, but one of the key findings from it was the weak moderation of tech companies in Kenya. And this is not just a state issue. Kenyans, culturally, they do not want moderation of media. There was a time when our sitting president wanted to moderate, to enter into agreements to moderate TikTok. And there was outcry and a lot of bullying and harassment until that conversation was stopped. So for us, even here in Kenya, we are suffering from our own cultural attitude and acceptance of TFGBV. And as such, media, social media are loosely moderated within our space. So we always try to engage them. They only rely on their weak standard acceptance, user guidelines that they give on their platforms. So user notice is given. So if you enter, you agree to everything that happens on that platform. So that is really a big challenge for us, that even as our work, we would want to work with media companies to understand their impact on people's lives, because these are people's lives. And now we know how online affects the physical. That is really a huge problem.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sorry, I was nodding along. I'm in total agreement, Faith. And I think one of the things that we always speak
Great.
about when we're
Thank you,
talking
Faith.
about,
That was
oh, I'm so sorry, is there a delay?
super clear. And Felicity, I'll turn over to you. Over to you, Felicity.
So sorry if there is a delay. Yeah, I was just going to agree with everything you said, Faith. And you know, one of the things that we always speak about when we talk about these tech platforms is, well, why were they started? They were started as platforms, not publishers. So actually, when you talk to them about content moderation, it's often that's being said. You know, actually, they're not a publisher. They're not there to kind of regulate the speech. It was meant to be a platform. But there has to be a point where actually the use of the platform has changed in such a way, and it becomes no longer just a public good, but actually a place of quite a lot of concern. And we've actually tried to engage platforms across a lot of our different work, and to varying levels of success. But I think one of the approaches that seems to be working for us is, with all the evidence that we have, all that data, through rigorous methodologies, we can really show them what's going on. They seem to like to listen to that. So yeah, we'll keep working on it, but I think we have to really rethink what these platforms are and how they function in order to work out how to move forward. Thanks, Jessica.
Thank you. And then lastly, just very, very quickly, we have 1 minute before I will close. Do you have any knowledge of SOPs that are out there, either at a global level or country-specific ones that you think our partner organizations could use in their own work? Felicity, I see you're still on the screen. Over to you.
Yeah, I first, and then I'll pass to Faith. We have seen a lot of amazing work done by small grassroots organizations. So I put two into the kind of answer to the question. People like She Secure in Ethiopia, a fantastic group of women who set up a support group on Telegram, which educates other women on how to protect themselves online. You know, those types of things, those initiatives, I think are fantastic. So really want to spotlight things like that alongside some of the media literacy training. But I do think that there is more to be done in terms of actual policy and law, because at the moment, the burden of responsibility for protecting against TFGBV does fall to the individual and the community rather than other stakeholders. So it's about trying to bring them into the discussion. And I will pause there because I'm sure Faith's got loads of great things to say.
Great. Faith, very quickly, are you aware of any SOPs or other documents that or guidance that can help our partner organizations navigate tech facilitated GBV?
I would say that for the Kenyan context, I have not seen a TFGBV specific SOP yet, but it is a work in progress. What I have seen being addressed with maybe the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution is that they are under General Gender-Based Violence or Sexual Offences Act. So it is not specific to TFGBV, and that is a conversation that we are pushing so that we have standalone SOPs to guide our work. But if others have it, they can always share so that we enrich our knowledge with it.
Great. Thank you so much, Faith. I see that we do have people. I see that we have Tori from UNFPA. And I saw other people had their hand raised, and I apologize. We don't usually do a Q&A, but I think Tori might be able to give us some insights on SOPs from the perspective of UNFPA. Tori, anything from UNFPA's side in terms of development of SOPs?
Yeah, thanks so much, Jessica. Sorry, just wanted to clarify from the chat. So at global level, UNFPA is in the process of developing a guidance on integrating TFGBV into GBV case management systems with the view to inform SOPs that are happening at country level. And then under the Making All Spaces Safe program in Kenya and Benin, they are, before the end of this year, going to have exactly those TFGBV SOPs. But the main point I want to make is that TFGBV is not a siloed issue to gender-based violence. The integration is really critical. It's not a separate issue to consider to your usual GBV case management systems. Over for me.
Great. Thank you so much. And thank you everyone else, particularly Felicity from CIR and Faith from from COVAL here in Kenya. Very much appreciated. Your presentations really resonated with all of our participants. Please note that you can find a recording of this webinar on our YouTube channel, which is GBV AOR. You can find this and all other recordings on our YouTube channel. We don't usually share the presentations, but you can access the link so that you can digest all of this information at your own pace. Also, please note, many of you have applied to our case management training, our remote case management training, and we're really pleased by the turnout. Just to give one update on that, we did have over 1,400 applications to date. And to note that we did close the application process early. It was going to go till August 7th, but since we had so many applicants, we did close early. That doesn't mean that we won't have another tranche, but I just wanted everyone to know we will be reaching out to those who have applied with more information and to reveal whether you have been in the first cohort. So bear with us. We did have a lot of participants. So thank you very much again to CIR and to COVAL for joining us today, and through all of our participants. It is really appreciated, and it's good to see you all online, and really honoring also all of our partners who are working in Gaza and beyond. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jessica. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica.
Thank you, everyone.